and we must contribute to the strategic balance of the region. We don't want to see any one country dominating or any country being dominated. We cannot accept a situation where large countries determine the fate of smaller countries. That is why Russia's illegal, immoral invasion of Ukraine cannot be normalised and it cannot be minimised. Russia's attack on Ukraine is an attack on all smaller countries. It is an assertion that a larger country is entitled to subjugate a smaller neighbour, to decide whether another country can even exist. It was never intended that the Security Council veto power would be used to enable unchecked abuse of the UN Charter by the very countries that were given the veto. So it is especially important for countries that play leading roles in international fora and countries with influence on Russia to exert their influence to end this war. In this, the world looks to China, a great power, a permanent member of the Security Council with a no-limits partnership with Russia. Mr. Putin's weak and desperate nuclear threats underline the danger that nuclear weapons pose to us all and the urgent need for progress on nuclear disarmament. Australia has always pursued a world without nuclear weapons, and we will redouble our efforts towards this goal and to strengthening the non-proliferation regime. The death and destruction in Ukraine reminds us all how much we have to lose if we fail to protect the UN Charter. It reminds us that each nation must make its own choices and exercise its own agency. We cannot leave it to the big powers, and we cannot be passive when big powers flout the rules. Aside from terrible damage and loss of life in Ukraine, Russia's invasion is compounding human suffering, propelling the global crisis in food and energy security. In my own region, where geopolitical contest becomes ever sharper, we must ensure that competition does not escalate into conflict. Because if conflict were to break out in the Indo-Pacific, it would be catastrophic for our people and our prosperity. And with the Indo-Pacific's centrality to global prosperity and security, the cost would extend far beyond our region and reach into every life. So I say to small and medium-sized nations like my own, we are more than just supporting players in a grand drama of global geopolitics on a stage dominated by great powers. It is up to all of us to create the kind of world to which we aspire: stable, peaceful, prosperous, and respectful of sovereignty. That is the very rationale for the United Nations itself. It is up to all of us to ask ourselves, how can we each use our state power, our influence, our networks, our capabilities to avert catastrophic conflict? How do we acquit our responsibilities to constrain tensions, to apply the brakes before the momentum for conflict in our region or beyond becomes unstoppable? Australia is resolved to these tasks in all our diplomacy in the UN and beyond. It is why we seek a seat on the UN Security Council for 2029-2030. It is why we seek reform of the Security Council with greater permanent representation for Africa, Latin America and Asia, including India and Japan. Being genuinely committed to the United Nations means being genuinely committed to reforming the United Nations and keeping it vital. We know that we will always be better off in a world where rules and norms, whether on trade, the maritime domain, or military engagement, on the environment or human rights, are clear, mutually negotiated and consistently followed. History teaches us that the alternative to what we have built here is conflict and chaos, a world where differences and disputes are settled by size and power alone, instead of by agreed rules and norms. Humanity has benefited from the multilateral system. Humanity has benefited from the rules that have underpinned an unequalled period of human development. Humanity will pay the price if we allow it to flounder. Every nation and all our peoples. Thank you, Mr. President.